How big is the African diaspora living in the Northern Hemisphere?
Many millions of people.
How should African Christian publishers engage with that? Would you educate us a little about the needs of the African diaspora
Yes.
to content developed from Africa or by Africans living in the diaspora also?
I do think that actually, if the African diaspora were a country, it would be one of the biggest countries in the continent. Right? And I'm talking about the diaspora that's emerged after the fall of European imperialism in Africa. Right? If we count the old diaspora in that conversation, so we're talking about black people in Brazil, black people in the West Indies, African Americans, that's a very, very big country. Right? But even if we're just counting those who have migrated recently, it's still a huge country. And so I do plead with people, mission agencies, and now I think it's critical for publishers to be aware of. Think of it as a country, big country, a big African country.
What are the issues? What are the issues that we should be writing about? What are the gaps you feel maybe with you living in the diaspora?
The most prominent one at the moment is, what do we do with our children growing up in the diaspora? Second generation, that's how we refer to them out there. What do we do with the second generation? The young Africans, children of African migrants in Europe, in North America. What will happen with most of those young people is that when they're in primary school, most of them, they will, I'll use an example of Britain. In primary school, young African kids will say, I'm British. When you ask them, where are you from? They usually tell you that my parents are from Malawi or my parents are from Kenya. They don't include themselves in that understanding that I am from Kenya too, I am from Malawi
Oh, my
too.
parents.
Yes, they say my parents are from Africa. I hear it all the time. Up until they go to high school, then they realize that actually I'm not from here as well, right? And by many of them, by the time they go to uni, they will have embraced their African identity. And what that means is they will have realized that actually I may want to belong here, but these people around don't see me as one that belongs here.
Oh.
Right? So they don't really fully belong out there, a majority of them. But the challenge for them is that actually, when we bring them back to the continent, they don't belong either. So they are hung somewhere. I use a geographic example of they are somewhere over the Mediterranean. They don't belong in Africa that much, and they don't belong in Europe that much. And I think of them as also a nation of their own people who have multiple belongings, but don't fully belong anywhere.
Wow.
Right? And so we have to wrestle with issues of identity. Who are these people? Where do they belong? Where are their roots? Right? How do they do the faith? How do they follow Christ, having grown up in a very secular world?
Wow. So you identify the issues within the family, and now I'm also thinking about the churches and the pastors.
Yes.
What kind of discipleship resources do African diaspora use in the spiritual formation of their members?
We're struggling in that area. We're struggling partly because we don't really get together to develop resources together as a people. And that's also partly because of especially for Africa, the colonial legacy. That our churches are still very much shaped by our national identities, even in the diaspora. So you have Kenyan churches, you have Nigerian churches, you have Ghanaian churches, you have Malawian churches. And when you look at, for example, the Kenyan churches, you have Kikuyu churches and you have Luo churches and you have Kisii churches, and they don't really belong together. And so it's difficult to create resources for us together as a people. I'll give you an example of a church that my friend pastors in Germany. He is from Ghana. That means he speaks English.
Yes.
His children are born in Germany. They don't speak English, and they don't speak Twi, which is the language, the Ghanaian language. So in church, the services are done mostly in Twi or in English.
Okay.
Right? Which means that the younger generation gets only... That's right. Right? At home, the parents who will speak Twi or English to the kids, and the kids respond in German, right? And that means there's a lot of miscommunication. How do you disciple people when you can share a common language?
Oh.
And that again is common, especially in the non-English speaking part of the West.
Are the diaspora reading? What's the reading culture among the African diaspora?
They are reading, yes. To a great extent, they're not reading Africans. Right? And again, that's something that we need to wrestle with. Africans in the diaspora engage Africa positively. You will know that the movement for independence that happens in the 50s and 60s in Africa really depends on what was going on in the African diaspora at the time. Right? It's the African diaspora. It's Kamuzu Banda, Jomo Kenyatta, Kwame Nkrumah meeting in Manchester in 1945. Right? And beginning to think, how do we take back the continent? But I do think that there has to be some intentionality in building bridges between the continent and its diaspora.
That's a good challenge.
Right? I argue that our kids growing up in the diaspora, in a very individualistic culture, as in, back here in the continent, kids play outside all the time. It's difficult to do that in Europe. Right? So your kids are growing up in this insulated family of 4 or 5, and that's it, right? No real connections with uncles and aunties. And yet, as we know, back here in the continent, it takes a village to raise a kid.
True.
Right? And so I do plead with people in the continent who have nieces and nephews out in the diaspora. Those kids need you. They need the connection with their uncles and aunties and cousins in the continent. So we got to be intentional about these things.
Wow. That's a very good challenge, especially for us as publishers, to start thinking about how do we build the bridges, how do we serve that our brothers and sisters living in the diaspora, and even how do we benefit from what they have to offer the continent.
Sure.
Because one of the things that shocks me is, for instance, I think in our country, the remissions by the diaspora have exceeded huge sectors of the economy. It's now being counted as one of the major contributions. And so, creating that bridge in terms of our Christian witness and publishing, I think would be something that we need to think about deeply.
For African leaders or African ministers in the diaspora, we don't really have any serious resources helping people learn how to contextualize their ministries, learn how to how do you lead churches out there in a context that's very far away from home. And one of the things that we talk about a lot in African communities in the diaspora is the power shifts at home when it's not only the man who is the breadwinner, right? And in some cases, men are making more money than women, right? And generally speaking, that brings tension in the house. I was talking to a Nigerian female pastor in London just a few months ago, and she was saying the most dangerous thing to happen to Nigerians in the UK is divorce among young Nigerian couples trying to figure out how do we negotiate the power dynamics at home now that we both have same earning power, right? And those are issues that pastors need to attend to, and those are issues that we need resources for. So there are quite a few topics that we need to wrestle with. How do we equip our pastors
in the diaspora to handle the contemporary issues? How has this message been received? I think by now you've traveled to about 32 continents, launching the book, done this in America, in Europe, here in Africa. What's been the response?
The response to decolonizing mission has been largely positive, and maybe it's because I'm talking to people who have been wrestling with this already. I do know that I've done 2 events in the United States around the book, one in Pittsburgh, the other one in Houston, and very positive response. There are people who were saying we are ready for this. We've been wondering how can we talk about mission without colonialism, mission without imperialism. In the UK as well, and in Germany. In Germany, I do say that most of my friends in Germany don't even need to be persuaded about the history of mission and colonialism. The questions they are asking is, what do we do next? Right? I mean, Germany lost its colonies right after the First World War. So their colonial era in Africa is quite short. Right? And of course it has some difficult history, the genocide of the Herero in Namibia, and that has weighed heavily on German conscience, and so they have had this conversation already. Most of my German friends have already decolonized their missiology to a point that actually for many in Germany, the word mission is not usable anymore. You can't talk about mission. Because mission is directly in their mind connected to colonialism.
Interesting. So what word are they?
I think they've picked up the words like witness. There are quite a few words. Witness. They talk about pilgrims and sojourners and things of that sort. And that allows them to actually imagine a different missiology altogether.
That's very interesting.
The way I see them, I know quite a few German mission agencies, and the way they decenter themselves so that their African partners and their Asian partners can be as involved in what they're doing. It's just brilliant, just amazing.
Oh, interesting.
Right. But and here in Africa, I do think that we're living at an interesting time where the awareness of the impact, the long-standing impact of colonialism and neo-colonialism is rising. At the same time, it does feel like the empires, especially Western empires, are also trying to reasset themselves in the continent. And the Chinese are also trying to asset themselves in the continent. And connections with Russia are beginning to become more and more visible. And so there is a way in which this conversation is critical and needed and necessary now. But there is also a possibility that those who benefit from being connected with the empires will not want to hear about decolonizing.
So if you were to kind of create like a way to create Venn diagrams of the people in terms of their responses to this book and the message of the book, if you think about the Africans living here in Africa, talking about the diaspora in Africa, thinking about the probably the European white, what's been responses if you were to kind of look at those different groupings? How would you?
Yeah, I think we run into the problems of access to the book in the continent.
Okay.
The book came out in August 2025. We are speaking in January 2026, so it's been 6 months. And in those 6 months, it's been quite difficult to get the book to the continent of Africa. So it's circulated really well in in Europe, Germany, UK, France, and then in North America, United States and Canada.
Yeah.
And in those places, people who have really interacted with the book will be mostly people involved in mission education. And in that space, the book has had a very good reception because it highlights a history of mission that's not easily accessible in Western academic resources.
Okay.
So, and it was a conscious decision for me to write the book as an African, as a Malawian. And so I bring a voice. I tell stories that you will not find in mission history books written by Westerners. So the Western Academy has been quite generous in its response, and this will mostly be white Europeans, white Americans. The African diaspora in Europe and North America, again, yes, I think there's some really good interaction there. I've had a good engagement. I've had some good conversations with African leaders of churches in Europe and North America around the book. In the African continent, I think we're just beginning to see that. If what happened at Limuru is anything to go by, this is a timely conversation, especially for the younger generation in Africa. But this is the first time we are doing an event around the book in the continent. So let's have this conversation again in a year's time when the book has had a chance
bit of penetration.
That's
in
right.
The continent.
And the hope is that we'll get an African edition of the book that will be accessible at
affordable
at an African price, if I can say that. Quite affordable for many people.
For majority of the Africans.
Yeah.